Vladimir Putin, a peek into the life of Russia's powerful leader. Putin was born on October 7, 1952 in Leningrad, Soviet Union, now St. Petersburg, Russia, the youngest of three children of Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, 1911–1999, and Maria Ivanovna Putina, née Shelemova, 1911–1998. His grandfather, Spiridon Putin, 1879–1965, was a personal cook to Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin. Putin's birth was preceded by the deaths of two brothers, Albert, born in the 1930s, died in infancy, and Victor, born in 1940, died of diphtheria and starvation in 1942 during the siege of Leningrad by Nazi Germany's forces in World War II. Putin's mother was a factory worker, and his father was a conscript in the Soviet Navy, serving in the submarine fleet in the early 1930s. During the early stage of Nazi German invasion of the Soviet Union, his father served in the destruction battalion of the NKVD. Later, he was transferred to the regular army and was severely wounded in 1942. Putin's maternal grandmother was killed by the German occupiers of Tver region in 1941, and his maternal uncles disappeared on the Eastern Front during World War II. On September 1, 1960, Putin started at school number 193 at Baskov Lane, near his home. He was one of a few in his class of about 45 pupils who were not yet members of the Young Pioneer organization. At the age of 12, he began to practice sambo and judo. In his free time, he enjoyed reading the works of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Lenin. Putin studied German at St. Petersburg High School and speaks both German and English as additional languages. Putin studied law at the Leningrad State University named after Andrei Zhdanov, now St. Petersburg State University, in 1970 and graduated in 1975. His thesis was on the most favored nation trading principle in international law. While there, he was required to join the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU. He remained a member until it ceased to exist in 1991. Putin met Anatoly Sobchak, an assistant professor who taught business law, and who later became the co-author of the Russian Constitution and of corruption schemes in France. Putin was influential in Sobchak's career in St. Petersburg, and Sobchak was influential in Putin's career in Moscow. In 1997, he received a degree in economics, Kandidat ekonomicheskiy nauk, at the St. Petersburg Mining University for a thesis on energy dependencies and their instrumentalization in foreign policy. His supervisor was Vladimir Litvinenko, who in 2000 and again in 2004 managed his presidential election campaigns in St. Petersburg. Danchenko and Gatti consider Putin to be a plagiarist according to Western standards. In 1975, Putin joined the KGB and trained at the 401st KGB school in Okhta, Leningrad. After training, he worked in the 2nd Chief Directorate, Counterintelligence, before he was transferred to the 1st Chief Directorate, where he monitored foreigners and consular officials in Leningrad. In September 1984, Putin was sent to Moscow for further training at the Yuri Andropov Red Banner Institute. From 1985 to 1990, he served in Dresden, East Germany, using a cover identity as a translator. While posted in Dresden, Putin worked as one of the KGB's liaison officers to the Stasi secret police and was reportedly promoted to lieutenant colonel. According to the official Kremlin presidential site, the East German communist regime commended Putin with a bronze medal for faithful service to the National People's Army. Putin has publicly conveyed delight over his activities in Dresden, once recounting his confrontations with anti-communist protesters of 1989 who attempted the occupation of Stasi buildings in the city. Putin and his colleagues were reduced mainly to collecting press clippings, thus contributing to the mountains of useless information produced by the KGB, Russian-American Masha Gessen wrote in their 2012 biography of Putin. His work was also downplayed by former Stasi spy chief Markus Wolf and Putin's former KGB colleague Vladimir Usoltsev. Journalist Catherine Belton wrote in 2020 that this downplaying was actually cover for Putin's involvement in KGB coordination and support for the terrorist Red Army faction, whose members frequently hid in East Germany with the support of the Stasi. Dresden was preferred as a marginal town with only a small presence of Western intelligence services. However, a 2023 investigation by Der Spiegel reported that the anonymous source had never been an RAF member and considered a notorious fabulist, with several previous convictions, including for making false statements. After the collapse of the communist East German government, Putin was to resign from active KGB service because of suspicions aroused regarding his loyalty during demonstrations in Dresden and earlier, though the KGB and the Soviet army still operated in eastern Germany. He returned to Leningrad in early 1990 as a member of the active reserves, where he worked for about 3 months with the International Affairs section of Leningrad State University, reporting to Vice-Rector Yuri Molchanov, while working on his doctoral dissertation. There, he looked for new KGB recruits, watched the student body, and renewed his friendship with his former professor, Anatoly Sobchak, soon to be the mayor of Leningrad. Putin claims that he resigned with the rank of lieutenant colonel on August 20, 1991, on the second day of the 1991 Soviet coup d'état attempt against Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. Putin said, "As soon as the coup began, I immediately decided which side I was on," although he noted that the choice was hard because he had spent the best part of his life with the organs. In May 1990, Putin was appointed as an advisor on international affairs to the mayor of Leningrad Anatoly Sobchak. In a 2017 interview with Oliver Stone, Putin said that he resigned from the KGB in 1991, following the coup against Mikhail Gorbachev, as he did not agree with what had happened and did not want to be part of the intelligence in the new administration. On June 28, 1991, he became head of the Committee for External Relations of the Mayor's Office, with responsibility for promoting international relations and foreign investments and registering business ventures. Within a year, Putin was investigated by the City Legislative Council led by Marina Sali. It was concluded that he had understated prices and permitted the export of metals valued at $93 million in exchange for foreign food aid that never arrived. Despite the investigators' recommendation that Putin be fired, Putin remained head of the Committee for External Relations until 1996. From 1994 to 1996, he held several other political and governmental positions in St. Petersburg. In March 1994, Putin was appointed as first deputy chairman of the government of St. Petersburg. In May 1995, he organized the St. Petersburg branch of the pro-government Our Home, Russia political party, the Liberal Party of Power founded by Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin. In 1995, he managed the legislative election campaign for that party, and from 1995 through June 1997, he was the leader of its St. Petersburg branch. In June 1996, Sobchak lost his bid for re-election in St. Petersburg, and Putin, who had led his election campaign, resigned from his positions in the city administration. He moved to Moscow and was appointed as deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department headed by Pavel Borodin. He occupied this position until March 1997. He was responsible for the foreign property of the state and organized the transfer of the former assets of the Soviet Union and the CPSU to the Russian Federation. On March 26, 1997, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin deputy chief of the presidential staff, a post which he retained until May 1998, and chief of the main control directorate of the Presidential Property Management Department, until June 1998. His predecessor in this position was Alexei Kudrin and his successor was Nikolai Patrushev, both future prominent politicians and Putin's associates. On April 3, 1997, Putin was promoted to first-class active state counselor of the Russian Federation, the highest federal state civilian service rank. On May 25, 1998, Putin was appointed first deputy chief of the presidential staff for the regions, in succession to Victoria Midina. On July 15, he was appointed head of the Commission for the Preparation of Agreements on the Delimitation of the Power of the Regions and head of the Federal Center attached to the President, replacing Sergei Shakray. After Putin's appointment, the Commission completed no such agreements, although during Shakray's term as the head of the Commission 46 such agreements had been signed. Later, after becoming president, Putin cancelled all 46 agreements. On July 25, 1998, Yeltsin appointed Putin director of the Federal Security Service, FSB, the primary intelligence and security organization of the Russian Federation and the successor to the KGB. In 1999, Putin described communism as a blind alley, far away from the mainstream of civilization. On August 9, 1999, Putin was appointed one of three first deputy prime ministers, and later on that day, was appointed acting prime minister of the government of the Russian Federation by President Yeltsin. Yeltsin also announced that he wanted to see Putin as his successor. Later on that same day, Putin agreed to run for the presidency. On August 16, the State Duma approved his appointment as prime minister with 233 votes in favor, versus 84 against, 17 abstained, while a simple majority of 226 was required, making him Russia's fifth prime minister in fewer than 18 months. On his appointment, few expected Putin, virtually unknown to the general public, to last any longer than his predecessors. He was initially regarded as a Yeltsin loyalist. Like other prime ministers of Boris Yeltsin, Putin did not choose ministers himself. His cabinet was determined by the presidential administration. Yeltsin's main opponents and would-be successors were already campaigning to replace the ailing president, and they fought hard to prevent Putin's emergence as a potential successor. On December 31, 1999, Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned and, according to the Constitution of Russia, Putin became acting president of the Russian Federation. On assuming this role, Putin went on a previously scheduled visit to Russian troops in Chechnya. The inauguration of President Putin occurred on May 7, 2000. He appointed the Minister of Finance, Mikhail Kazyanov, as Prime Minister. The first major challenge to Putin's popularity came in August 2000, when he was criticized for the alleged mishandling of the Kursk submarine disaster. That criticism was largely because it took several days for Putin to return from vacation, and several more before he visited the scene. Between 2000 and 2004, Putin set about the reconstruction of the impoverished condition of the country, apparently winning a power struggle with the Russian oligarchs, reaching a grand bargain with them. This bargain allowed the oligarchs to maintain most of their powers, in exchange for their explicit support for, and alignment with, Putin's government. On March 14, 2004, Putin was elected to the presidency for a second term, receiving 71% of the vote. The Beslan school hostage crisis took place on 1–3 September 2004, more than 330 people died, including 186 children. The near 10-year period prior to the rise of Putin after the dissolution of Soviet rule was a time of upheaval in Russia. In a 2005 Kremlin speech, Putin characterized the collapse of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Putin elaborated, moreover, the epidemic of disintegration infected Russia itself. The country's cradle-to-grave social safety net was gone and life expectancy declined in the period preceding Putin's rule. In 2005, the national priority projects were launched to improve Russia's healthcare, education, housing, and agriculture. In a speech in February 2007 at the Munich Security Conference, Putin complained about the feeling of insecurity engendered by the dominant position in geopolitics of the United States, and observed that a former NATO official had made rhetorical promises not to expand into new countries in Eastern Europe. On July 14, 2007, Putin announced that Russia would suspend implementation of its Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe obligations, effective after 150 days, and suspend its ratification of the Adapted Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty, which treaty was shunned by NATO members abhorrent Russian withdrawal from Transnistria and the Republic of Georgia. Moscow continued to participate in the Joint Consultative Group, because it hoped that dialogue could lead to the creation of an effective, new conventional arms control regime in Europe. On July 14, 2007, Putin announced that Russia would suspend implementation of its Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe obligations, effective after 150 days, and suspend its ratification of the Adapted Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty, which treaty was shunned by NATO members abhorrent Russian withdrawal from Transnistria and the Republic of Georgia. On September 12, 2007, Putin dissolved the government upon the request of Prime Minister Mikhail Fradkov. Fradkov commented that it was to give the president a free hand in the run-up to the parliamentary election. Viktor Zubkov was appointed the new prime minister. On September 19, 2007, Putin's nuclear-capable bombers commenced exercises near the U.S., for the first time since the downfall of the USSR. In December 2007, United Russia, the governing party that supports the policies of Putin, won 64.24% of the popular vote in their run for State Duma according to election preliminary results. United Russia's victory in the December 2007 elections was seen by many as an indication of strong popular support of the then Russian leadership and its policies. On February 11, 2008, while Putin addressed the 15th anniversary party of Gazprom, its employees threatened Ukraine with a stoppage of flow. On April 4, 2008, at the NATO Bucharest summit, invitee Putin told George W. Bush and other conference delegates, "We view the appearance of a powerful military bloc on our border as a direct threat to the security of our nation. The claim that this process is not directed against Russia will not suffice. National security is not based on promises." Putin was barred from a third consecutive term by the Constitution. First Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was elected his successor. In a power-switching operation on May 8, 2008, only a day after handing the presidency to Medvedev, Putin was appointed Prime Minister of Russia, maintaining his political dominance. At the United Russia Congress in Moscow on September 24, 2011, Medvedev officially proposed that Putin stand for the presidency in 2012, an offer Putin accepted. Given United Russia's near-total dominance of Russian politics, many observers believed that Putin was assured of a third term. The move was expected to see Medvedev stand on the United Russia ticket in the parliamentary elections in December, with a goal of becoming prime minister at the end of his presidential term. After the parliamentary elections on December 4, 2011, tens of thousands of Russians engaged in protests against alleged electoral fraud, the largest protests in Putin's time. Protesters criticized Putin and United Russia and demanded annulment of the election results. Those protests sparked the fear of a color revolution in society. Putin allegedly organized a number of paramilitary groups loyal to himself and to the United Russia Party in the period between 2005 and 2012. On March 4, 2012, Putin won the 2012 Russian presidential election in the first round, with 63.6% of the vote, despite widespread accusations of vote rigging. Opposition groups accused Putin and the United Russia Party of fraud. While efforts to make the elections transparent were publicized, including the usage of webcams in polling stations, the vote was criticized by the Russian opposition and by international observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe for procedural irregularities. Putin's presidency was inaugurated in the Kremlin on May 7, 2012. On his first day as president, Putin issued 14 presidential decrees, which are sometimes called the May Decrees by the media, including a lengthy one stating wide-ranging goals for the Russian economy. In 2012 and 2013, Putin and the United Russia Party backed stricter legislation against the LGBT community, in St. Petersburg, Arkhangelsk, and Novosibirsk, a law called the Russian Gay Propaganda Law, that is against homosexual propaganda, which prohibits such symbols as the rainbow flag, as well as published works containing homosexual content, was adopted by the State Duma in June 2013. In February 2014, Russia made several military incursions into Ukrainian territory. After the Euromaidan protests and the fall of Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, Russian soldiers without insignias took control of strategic positions and infrastructure within the Ukrainian territory of Crimea. In October 2014, Putin addressed Russian security concerns in Sochi at the Valdai International Discussion Club. In November 2014, the Ukrainian military reported intensive movement of troops and equipment from Russia into the separatist-controlled parts of eastern Ukraine. Putin won the 2018 Russian presidential election with more than 76% of the vote. His fourth term began on May 7, 2018, and will last until 2024. On the same day, Putin invited Dmitry Medvedev to form a new government. On May 15, 2018, Putin took part in the opening of the movement along the highway section of the Crimean Bridge. On May 18, 2018, Putin signed decrees on the composition of the new government. On May 25, 2018, Putin announced that he would not run for president in 2024, justifying this in compliance with the Russian constitution. On June 14, 2018, Putin opened the 21st FIFA World Cup, which took place in Russia for the first time. On January 15, 2020, Medvedev and his entire government resigned after Putin's 2020 presidential address to the Federal Assembly. Putin suggested major constitutional amendments that could extend his political power after presidency. On the same day, Putin nominated Mikhail Mishustin, head of the country's Federal Tax Service, for the post of Prime Minister. The next day, he was confirmed by the State Duma to the post, and appointed Prime Minister by Putin's decree. This was the first time ever that a Prime Minister was confirmed without any votes against. On March 15, 2020, Putin instructed to form a working group of the State Council to counteract the spread of coronavirus. Putin appointed Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin as the head of the group. On February 24, Putin in a televised address announced a special military operation in Ukraine, launching a full-scale invasion of the country. Citing a purpose of denazification, he claimed to be doing this to protect people in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of Donbass who, according to Putin, faced humiliation and genocide from Ukraine for 8 years. Minutes after the speech, he launched a war to gain control of the remainder of the country and overthrow the elected government under the pretext that it was run by Nazis. Russia's invasion was met with international condemnation. International sanctions were widely imposed against Russia, including against Putin personally. The invasion also led to numerous calls for Putin to be pursued with war crime charges. The International Criminal Court, ICC, stated that it would investigate the possibility of war crimes in Ukraine since late 2013, and the United States pledged to help the ICC to prosecute Putin and others for war crimes committed during the invasion of Ukraine. On March 4, Putin signed into law a bill introducing prison sentences of up to 15 years for those who publish knowingly false information about the Russian military and its operations, leading to some media outlets in Russia to stop reporting on Ukraine. As early as March 25, the UN Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights reported that Putin ordered a kidnapping policy, whereby Ukrainian nationals who did not cooperate with the Russian takeover of their homeland were victimized by FSB agents. On March 28, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was 99.9% sure that Putin thought the Ukrainians would welcome the invading forces with flowers and smiles, while he opened the door to negotiations on the offer that Ukraine would henceforth be a non-aligned state. In December 2022, he said that a war against Ukraine could be a long process. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in the Russo-Ukrainian war since February 2022. In January 2023, Putin cited recognition of Russia's sovereignty over the annexed territories as a condition for peace talks with Ukraine. In July 2023, Putin threatened to take reciprocal action if Ukraine used US-supplied cluster munitions during a Ukrainian counteroffensive against Russian forces in occupied southeastern Ukraine. On July 17, 2023, Putin withdrew from a deal that allowed Ukraine to export grain across the Black Sea despite a wartime blockade, risking deepening the global food crisis and antagonizing neutral countries in the global south. On 27 to 28 July, Putin hosted the 2023 Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg, which was attended by delegations from more than 40 African countries. As of August 2023, the total number of Russian and Ukrainian soldiers killed or wounded during the Russian invasion of Ukraine was nearly 500,000. However, on December 14, 2023, Putin said, "There will only be peace in Ukraine when we achieve our aims," which he said are denazification, demilitarization and a neutral status of Ukraine. On December 23, 2023, the New York Times reported that Putin has been signaling through intermediaries since at least September 2022 that he is open to a ceasefire that freezes the fighting along the current lines. Official figures released during the legislative election of 2007 put Putin's wealth at approximately 3.7 million rubles, $280,000 in bank accounts, a private 77.4 square meter, 833 square feet, apartment in St. Petersburg, and miscellaneous other assets. Putin's reported 2006 income totaled 2 million rubles, approximately $152,000. In 2012, Putin reported an income of 3.6 million rubles, $270,000. Putin has been photographed wearing a number of expensive wristwatches, collectively valued at $700,000, nearly 6 times his annual salary. Putin has been known on occasion to give watches valued at thousands of dollars as gifts, for example a watch identified as a Blancpain to a Siberian boy he met while on vacation in 2009, and another similar watch to a factory worker the same year. As president and prime minister, Putin has lived in numerous official residences throughout the country. These residences include the Moscow Kremlin, Novoogoryovo in Moscow Oblast, Gorky, 9, RU, near Moscow, Bocharov Rushi in Sochi, Dolzhai Borody, residence, in Novgorod Oblast, and Riviera in Sochi. In August 2012, critics of Putin listed the ownership of 20 villas and palaces, 9 of which were built during Putin's 12 years in power. A massive Italianate-style mansion costing an alleged $1 billion and dubbed Putin's Palace, is under construction near the Black Sea village of Praskavivka. On July 28, 1983, Putin married Lyudmila Shkrebneva, and they lived together in East Germany from 1985 to 1990. They have 2 daughters, Maria Putina, born on April 28, 1985 in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, and Yekaterina Putina, born on August 31, 1986 in Dresden, East Germany, now Germany. An investigation by Proact published in November 2020 alleged that Putin has another daughter, Elizaveta, also known as Luisa Rozova, born in March 2003, with Svetlana Kravonigic. In April 2008, the Moskovsky correspondent reported that Putin had divorced Lyudmila and was engaged to marry Olympic gold medalist Alina Kabayeva, a former rhythmic gymnast and Russian politician. The story was denied, and the newspaper was shut down shortly thereafter. Putin and Lyudmila continued to make public appearances together as spouses, while the status of his relationship with Kabayeva became a topic of speculation. On June 6, 2013, Putin and Lyudmila announced that their marriage was over. On April 1, 2014, the Kremlin confirmed that the divorce had been finalized. Kabayeva reportedly gave birth to a daughter by Putin in 2015, this report was denied. Kabayeva reportedly gave birth to twin sons by Putin in 2019. However, in 2022, Swiss media, citing the couple's Swiss gynecologist, wrote that on both occasions Kabayeva gave birth to a boy. Putin has 2 grandsons, born in 2012 and 2017, through Maria. He reportedly also has a granddaughter, born in 2017, through Katerina. His cousin, Igor Putin, was a director at Moscow-based Master Bank and was accused in a number of money laundering scandals. Vladimir Putin's life journey, from humble beginnings to Russian presidency, reflects resilience and determination. His strategic thinking and leadership style, though controversial, showcase adaptability in navigating complex political landscapes. Despite criticism, Putin's unwavering commitment to his vision for Russia serves as a lesson in perseverance and ambition. Whether one agrees with his politics or not, Putin's rise to power illustrates the power of determination and the ability to overcome obstacles in pursuit of one's goals. Do well to follow, comment, like, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications to encourage us publish more contents like this. From all of us at Didactic Contents, we love you all.